Today we are talking about a plan to win reparations in the United States of America. In order to defeat, to overcome any intractable opposition, one must have a plan. One must have some strategy in order to accomplish that particular goal. If you simply act out, you simply do what comes to your emotional desire, to your mind, if you simply do stuff, that may make you feel good at the moment or at that time, but when it all comes out in the wash, you will not have accomplished anything big. Momentary skirmishes is fine if the skirmishes are tied to a logical, coherent pathway toward an eventual victory over whatever the opposition happens to be. In 2014, the reparations movement in the United States still has not accepted, still has not identified, still has not come to terms with a full-scale, comprehensive, strategic plan to win. And if we're not in reparations to win it, why are we in it at all? This is not just to have something to do. Most black people in America always have more than enough to do. This is about winning against a foe dedicated to keeping us where we are, out of the way, in the shadows, and in places that they can continue to disrespect. This is still, even with our African American president, this is still a society that does not respect black folk. In fact, that disrespects black folk simply for being black. In order to achieve reparations, we need a reparations plan. We are here today to talk about that. In order to have a plan, first of all, you have to clearly define what it is you are after, what the problem is, what you are trying to overcome. Then you have to talk about what has already been done to try to deal with that problem. If in fact anything has been done, then you have to lay out why you think the problem has to be dealt with. Then the steps to get to that end result, to overcome, to solve that particular problem. Then you have to be able to identify who will be the ones to solve the problem and who will be the ones to participate in moving forward. When we think about reparations, repair, healing, when we think about, as the incorporated definition says, putting us back to a position of being whole, which is our standard definition of reparations, which I don't particularly push in this particular presentation. That's what we call a conceptual definition of reparations, to repair. If you're going to repair something, that means that sometime or another it was already fixed. It was already whole. If you're going to make us whole, we must have been whole at some point. Well, when exactly was that? When were we whole as black people? Back in our African villages? I don't think so. Back in the time that we were talking about being moved from Africa to the Caribbean and to South Carolina and to other parts of the South? No, that's not what, we were not whole then. Were we whole when we were indentured servants at the beginning of our sojourn in what has now come to be called America? No, we were not whole then. If you're going to repair us back to when we were fixed, when were we fixed? We have not been able to identify that. That's what a conceptual definition does. It sounds good, but it's amorphous. It is what we call broad, so you cannot really implement it. So to repair us back to when we were whole or when we were fixed, nobody can actually identify that. We can't even quite identify who we were before we came here. I know we have DNA tests that are now being used to identify what part of Africa we came from, but there's a gigantic limitation in those DNA tests. DNA evaluations are about genetics. we are part of ethnic groups. So your DNA will not tell you what ethnic group you are part of out of the 1,500 or so. It would not tell you whether you're Zulu, Wolof, Fulani. It will not tell you that. In fact, when most African Americans do pay the $345 or so for a DNA test, what it will tell you is that you're a Mende. That means you're West African. Hell, we knew that before we paid the $345. It will say that your ancestral ties are to West Africa. But because we're African American, all of us may do like Oprah said, well, I want to be Zulu. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm Zulu. That's one way to handle it. The issue, however, is identifying who reparations is supposed to be aimed at, who is supposed to benefit from the reparations, and what point we are talking about being returned to. For this particular reparations plan, and this was the one that was formulated in 2004 when we had the Reparations Congress, that National Reparations Congress, the only one that had been held, as far as I know, anywhere in this country. A Congress, that means a gathering together of representatives from as many of the community-based organizations working on reparations as we could get to come. So we had people from New York, from Louisiana, from Atlanta, we had people from Seattle, we had people from San Francisco, we had people from St. Louis, we had people from Texas, we had people from Chicago, we had people from as many places that we could get to come to Los Angeles, California, to Compton, to not just talk, but to do some planning. So this plan came out of the National Reparations Congress held in Compton, California in 2004. It has since been revised. It is being revised again for 2014. That plan says that external reparations is the government acknowledgement, apology, atonement, and compensation for its participation in the seizure and misuse of valuable property, that valuable property being labor property, taken from black Americans who worked as slaves between 1775 and 1865 in this country, using that ill-gotten property to unjustly enrich this country and white people, and to help this country become the great nation it is today, all without fairly compensating those African Americans and their descendants for the deliberate loss of their labor property. That is the definition of reparations that this particular plan uses in terms of external reparations. We see there being at least two major kinds of reparations, two major kinds of repair. Again, external and now internal. Internal reparations is what we call the black assessment and identification of those negative and debilitating aspects of our communities that we can mobilize and organize our efforts to repair, reform, and correct for our own benefit. We don't need white people to do this. We need to do it for ourselves. The formulation of action plans, both short-term and long-term plans, to address the problems and negative aspects that we have assessed and identified, and then the implementation of those plans. Let me give you an example. At Cal State Dominguez Hills, a group of students has decided that the N-word that we use so frequently and so familiarly every day with each other, even though we sometimes say these are words of endearment, and sometimes we use it in words of anger. We shouldn't be using it at all. But anyway, the N-word that we use against ourselves and with ourselves, and the B-word that we clearly use way too much in terms of dealing with our African American sisters. These students have decided that there should be a pause in the use of the B-word and the N-word. The aim is to eventually get rid of both of them, but that's not the first step. The first step is let's at least back away from our addiction to it. So during Black History Month 2014, these students are asking the African American community to back away, to stop using, to pause in using the N word and the B word. Use some other part of English. I mean, there are a number of other terms that you can use. Those are convenient, yeah, they're familiar, but they are not positive for our community. So part of internal reparations is for folk to come up with ideas like that. We fully support that particular effort. It is a clear indication of internal reparations and the effort to achieve internal reparations. We need to help to clean ourselves up. We are being asked, as Michael Jackson said, look in the mirror, and the man in the mirror is the first one you want to deal with in terms of getting better. Before you look at everybody else being wrong, look in the mirror and take care of what you can take care of. Reparations is a race-based quest for justice in America. It is a race-based quest for the restoration and redemption of our dignity and our positive worth as a people in this country and on this planet. Reparations is our relentless quest to achieve respect for simply being black people in this country and in this world. The single collective existence of black people in America and on this planet is one of the common habitual disrespect. That's what you have being black in this country. I just came from a conference in South Africa, a group called the SIDDIS, S-I-D-D-I-S. Got a chance to present at the Congress in South Africa. Most of us present did not have a great deal of knowledge about this group before they came and spoke to us. I had heard about them in India, but I just really did not know a whole lot about them. What they were able to lay out was that as descendants of slaves carried into India, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan by the Portuguese mainly, they have no legal status in India. They are below the Dalits. The Dalits we know of as the untouchables, well, the SIDDIS are not even untouchables. The SIDDIS have no legal status in the place that they have occupied for the last 200 years. They do all the dirty work. They clean all the garbage. They deal with the detritus of society. They are treated, they say, as badly as any four-legged animal. In fact, they're treated worse than most of the animals in India, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan. What we are saying is that the common position, this common condition of black folk on this planet, even sometimes in areas that are run by, or presided over by other black people, is to be mistreated, is to be pushed around. Being black is being disrespected in this world, and we are talking about, in this plan, winning a change in that condition. The reparations is a demand for an apology, an atonement, and some compensation to make sure that your atonement is serious, that you are not just saying you're sorry, but then you're going to continue doing what you did to get you to say that you're sorry in the first place. Apology without atonement means little or nothing. For a lot of young men, for example, we will continue to say that we are sorry when we get caught doing something we should not have done, when we have cheated on our woman, when we have embezzled funds, when we have basically been places where we are not supposed to be. Yeah, we apologize, but we're not apologizing because we're sorry we did it. We're apologizing because we're sorry we got caught doing it, got caught afterwards. Atonement shows the seriousness of your apology. It also makes you understand not to do it again, because you had to pay something, you had to lose something. That shows the seriousness of your apology. So apology, atonement, compensation, that is what reparations is within this plan. And compensation has to be decided by African Americans. It cannot be decided by a handful of people sitting in a room deciding on their own what black people want. That kind of personal agenda is not what this is about. African Americans must speak and identify what a reparations victory will look like, what the end game will look like. Reparations is the race-based quest to heal this country of its racist past and its present, and to provide a viable, non-racist alternative for this country's future. Reparations is the accumulation of overwhelming bushels of evidence, including personal testimony, property records and deeds, financial profits and transactions, historical documentation, and a clear sense of righteous indignation, together balled up into tight, steel-trap arguments that will compel victory in the foreseeable future. This is not just about talking off the top of your head. You've got to be ready to present compelling arguments. For example, we have been told that President Barack Obama is not in favor of reparations. In fact, there's a YouTube video when he was speaking at a presentation when he was running for office. He clearly said, I am not in favor of reparations. One of the reasons he said he was not in favor of reparations is that we have not presented him with compelling arguments. He's a lawyer. He's used to dealing with argumentation. We have to present the compelling arguments to him about why he should favor reparations, why it is necessary for African Americans to attain. Reparations is a nationwide regional struggle in the United States that is closely intertwined with a global reparations struggle against colonialism and capitalist exploitation. A reparations victory anywhere will show the way for reparations victories everywhere. It is also an internal struggle for us to redeem and rescue ourselves, and an external struggle to exact acknowledgement, apology, and atonement from this country for its long-term abuse and exploitation of black people. Reparations is a demand for the release and return of our black political prisoners. Reparations is logical, it is correct, and it's winnable. It is not a handout, it is not another welfare program, it is not an extortion plot to fleece white people. Reparations is not solely an economic issue. We cannot buy the respect that is due us. So simply saying that we want money to compensate ourselves for having been abused, or our forefathers having been abused, forefathers and foremothers having been abused, that's not good enough. They can give us money, but that's not going to buy respect. Our issue is disrespect. Money does not buy black people respect. It is not a substitute for regular and ordinary social programming done by the U.S. government. It is not a far-out fantasy of the lunatic fringe. Reparations is not an issue that black folk will simply forget about and get over. It is not going to be won by trying to solve all of our problems at once. We must focus our efforts specifically. We cannot talk about reparations for the slave trade or the Ma'afa and slavery at the same time. We will not accomplish either one when we do that. Our holding people accountable for the transatlantic slave trade, the French, the English, the Spanish, that's different from holding people accountable for antebellum slavery in this country. Slavery, enslavement was different from the transatlantic slave trade. Now, there was an internal slave trade in this country that grew out of enslavement. But again, we have to separate the two if we intend to accomplish either one or both of them. We cannot lump everything into one pot. Reparations is not a panacea for all black problems. It is the beginning of our being able to end those ills that have kept us down for so long. Reparations will not cause more racial friction. It will finally show that racial healing does work in America. It is not a struggle that can be won by one segment of the black population in the USA. To win in this country, we need a coming together of virtually all segments of the African American population. There will not be any one man, one woman, one organization that wins reparations. Reparations is not a struggle that will be won by emotion, zeal, self-righteousness, and passion alone. We must have a continuous strategic planning. We must have common sense. We must have mother wit and mutual respect in order to get this done. So we need to understand those in terms of a reparations plan that we know will win. We also need to tell you that reparations is a debt. It's a debt owed by the United States government, most of the state governments, and most of the local governments. It's a debt that we will be able to identify, be able to clearly articulate whether there's any kind of financial issue involved, like the Freedmen's Bureau Bank, for example. We can identify exactly how much money was in there, how much money black people lost, who were the black people who lost the money. If we can find out who stole it, we can maybe find out who is responsible for compensating those who lost their money. But we are talking about being able to do that. We're talking about research. We're talking about scholarship. We're talking about work, not just emotion. Now, 78% of the African American population was unjustly enslaved in this country between 1861 and 1661 and 1865 in the United States. Now, here's the issue with that. A lot of us want to argue that 400 years of slavery is the issue. From 1619, when African Americans were supposed to have come here as part of the English settlement. We were here 100 years earlier in terms of working with the Spanish. But in terms of becoming part of the English settlement that eventually became the foundation for this country, we talk about 400 years of slavery from 1619 to 1865. Number one, the first African Americans who came here in the English settlement were not slaves. They were indentured servants. That's a legal designation. They basically had to work, but it was by contract. And when the contract was over, they basically got a chance to own property, to vote, etc. The other issue is that there was a colonial period in this country between 1619 and 1775-76, when this country was essentially owned by England, France, and to a certain extent, the Spanish. We cannot hold the United States accountable for what occurred during colonialism. We can hold America accountable from the time that America became a legal entity. And that was not until 1775-76 with the Second Continental Congress, when they said that we are the United States of Africa. We are no longer colonies. We are the United States of America. And they established the authority to write America's first Constitution, which, by the way, did not get approved until 1781. But until we were a legal entity as a country, the United States cannot be held accountable for slavery. And we have to put that into our calculations. Black Americans were not paid for their labor, yet that slave labor helped to build and to enrich this country. This is not myth, this is not hyperbole, this is provable fact. This process is called unjust enrichment, and that is exactly what African American unpaid labor provided. The unjust enrichment of white privilege. You have white people who will say, I never owned a slave. Slavery was over when my family came here. I'm an immigrant, my family came here, and I was able to make a way for myself in this country. That's fine. You can even say that all the white people during antebellum slavery did not own slaves. Most white people did not own slaves. The issue, however, is that the unpaid labor of African Americans created the white privilege that all of these other folk have come to enjoy. They didn't earn it, but they do enjoy it. We provided the wherewithal. We provided you the profits. We provided you the material expansion that created white privilege in this country. You get benefits, you get opportunities simply because you're white that African Americans never get. That white privilege came from unpaid black labor. That's called unjust enrichment. Even free black folk, even free African Americans were enslaved in this country through the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act. Legally, African Americans who call themselves part of the middle class were free. But de facto, the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act said that even if you claim to be free, any white person could simply say you were a slave. And since black people could not testify in court, the word of that one white person would be taken as gospel truth, and the sheriff would come and arrest you and take you away. For those of you who got a chance to see 12 Years a Slave, the dramatization of the Solomon Northup book, the diary of his work, the memoir of his life, those of you who saw 12 Years a Slave, you saw this black gentleman who had a family, who was up north, who owned property, who was doing relatively well, being reduced in one day to someone who was now a slave, who had never been in that situation before, but using the bullwhip and using an overwhelming imposition of white power, he was forced from freedom to slavery overnight. That did not just occur to him, or that was just not imposed on him, that was imposed on a great number of free black people in this country. That means compensation is not only due for the descendants of slaves, but the descendants of the black middle class who had their dignity, their property, their sense of worth taken away from them because of the 1850 Fugitive Slave Act. Now, after the Civil War, blacks were legally freed by the 13th Amendment, but they were economically shackled. That is, they were not allowed to have self-sustaining economic arrangements. They were not allowed to have land. They were not allowed to deal with black businesses, be black entrepreneurs. There were always obstacles in the way. Whites who were not convinced that African Americans were worth freedom did everything they could locally, statewide, and nationally to interfere in African Americans accepting that they were free. There were micro racisms, as you would call it, the same thing that we see in our daily lives. There are small, quiet ways of making sure you understand you may call yourself free, but I'm going to arrest you right now because you don't seem to have a job. You seem to be vagrant. But I'm just sitting on the side of the road waiting for the sun to go down. I'm not vagrant. I say you're vagrant, therefore you're vagrant, therefore I'm arresting you, therefore you are going to go to prison and to become part of a prison gang labor force that will now go and work for a corporation or plantation owner who will then pay me for arresting you. So you've had a lot of ways of reducing African Americans back to a state of dependency and back to a state of non-freedom, even though legally freedom was supposed to have been obtained by the 13th Amendment. All of that is part of the reparations that must be dealt with. All of that's part of the debt that is still owed. The federal government convinced the majority of the southern black population where 59% of the black population lived at that time, to invest all of their meager savings and assets into the Freedmen's Savings Bank. Then they allowed corrupt bank officials who never went to jail, that the U.S. government appointed, they allowed them to steal the money and to close the bank with over $5 million, which would be valued at somewhere between $40 and $50 million today, of that money unaccounted for. Those officials were never prosecuted, they were never put in jail, that money was never recovered. There is a debt that is owed to African Americans. After giving America its loyalty, its hard work, and its trust, the black American population was punished by the federal and state governments simply for being black and for being poor. This punishment was through the black codes, through lynching, through Jim Crowism, through deficient education, through restrictive covenants, through black disenfranchisement, and covert and overt patterns of racial discrimination. And this persistent punishment continues today through 21st century racism and unremitting disrespect. This is also known as relentless harm. So unjust enrichment, relentless harm. These are the two major concepts that define the debt that is owed by America to its African American constituents. The plan itself is based on what I just gave you. Now, the plan itself is about how do we overcome, how do we defeat that set of conditions? How do we move beyond that? How do we get African Americans to a place of respect from the place of disrespect in which they now exist? There are short-term and long-term goals that we can accomplish, as I already mentioned earlier. For youth, for example, in terms of short-term goals, we need to disseminate the word to all college, university campuses, and public and charter schools that Black History Month activities are not just some passing fancy, but Black History Month activities must be part of the regular curriculum in those schools. And that there should be a list of reparations speakers brought in to those schools to remind young people that there's a debt to be paid and that that debt must be accountable for. We must make sure that for all upcoming student conferences, student meetings, that somebody there reminds the attendees that reparations is still due, reparations is still on the table, and that it needs to be discussed. In the meeting that I mentioned earlier in South Africa, the 8th Pan-African Congress, we had a very big discussion about reparations, international, national, etc. And the decision by the gathered attendees was that the reparations movement was part and parcel of the Pan-African movement. So as Africa moves toward unification, a union of all African states, we will continue to work on solving the reparations issue as part of that. We need to make sure that all of the Africana, Black, Pan-African, Black Studies, African and African American Studies departments and programs, whatever name we want to use, eventually we are going to get one name, and it may end up being Africana Studies, but all of those departments and programs should try to get professors to set up reparations classes, colloquia, or seminars to discuss this issue, or else to incorporate it in topics in their course syllabi. We do need to mention that there are a number of universities that have already done this. Rutgers University, for example, is already teaching reparations courses. Now, there are a number of textbooks. There are at least 25 very good textbooks on reparations issues now available. We need to set up book clubs on reparations, and we need to keep current with the increasing literature on the topic. There are literally thousands of articles that have been written in newspaper, magazines, and on the internet about reparations. We need to keep up with that. In fact, we need to provide each other, share with each other these bibliographies of reparations literature. Since we like to share a lot on the internet, we need to share that. We need to buy and support records of music by hip-hop artists who speak positively about reparations, not the knuckleheads who have been talking about making the immaterial situation a joke, not the knuckleheads who were talking about Harriet Tubman and her sexual fantasies about her master. That's not a responsible hip-hop artist. We're not talking about those. We're talking about the ones who can actually tell you something that is going to expand your knowledge about the positive contributions that African Americans have made to this country, and about the debt that is still owed to them, about how we can get rid of disrespect for the African American. So we need to encourage our hip-hop artists. We need to write to the producers. We need to write to Diddy. We need to write to whoever is producing our hip-hop artists' music, the rap artists' music. Encourage them to get their artists to put reparations tracks on their albums. Let's get Beyonce to sing something about reparations in her tours across the world. That would be interesting. We need to make sure that in church, in the mosque, in community groups and campus cultural activities, including theater, dance performances, poetry readings, poetry slams, singing, step shows, etc., that students and youth are involved in, and they push for reparations issues to be included in the activities. We need to have those in the mosque talk about reparations. That was an Arab slave trade. The Arab slave trade needs to be included in reparations activities now. We need to find out whether the campus, high school, or college, or university was built by slaves or founded by investors who made money from slavery. If so, we need to have a discussion with the current administrators of any of those schools, as we did with the Brown University in Rhode Island, which was built by slaves. The Brown family made virtually all of their money from profits in the slave trade. We've had a discussion with the present administration at Brown University about what to do about that, whether to offer scholarships, more scholarships to African American students or what. But we need to do the research. We need to find a distinctive tactic that appeals to young people and to students, and to spread it on the internet. Stand in front of the classroom, get on the campus lawns, talk about reparations and its positive impact on young people. We need to set up a student reparations response team on every campus to immediately produce a written rebuttal to any newspaper article, blog, piece that attacks reparations, that attacks what African Americans are owed. For example, a few years ago, David Horowitz wrote a widespread article about 10 reasons why there should not be any reparations. Well, there should be a student group, a student response team on every campus in this country to make sure you respond to stuff like that, to put it back where it belongs. We don't let, I'll use one example, the Jewish population tends to be hypersensitive to anything that it thinks is anti-Semitic. Sometimes they overreact. However, they have sent a message. If you are not careful in what you say when it concerns us, there will be consequences. we need to do the same thing in terms of reparations, the debt owed, and attaining the positive respect for African Americans that we deserve. In churches and in mosques, we need to investigate the scheduling of all upcoming church conventions and conferences in our area where policy resolutions and substantial discussion will be allowed. We need to get on the agenda when they allow that, and we need to be able to ask for reparations resolutions to be written and passed by the governing boards of the churches and the mosques. That's already been working. We've been able to get to the Episcopal Church to do that. The Quakers have already made a resolution that way. We need to do that with many more churches and mosques. The African American church has to be involved in the reparations movement. We cannot do that from the outside. We cannot do that just by throwing rocks and making complaints from the outside. We need to talk to the ministers. We need to talk to the congregations. We need to get members to go in and to ask for a reparations sermon. Minister, talk about the Jews coming out of Egypt. Talk about reparations. Talk about the reparations quotations that are in the Bible. Talk about all of the ways that we can get involved in reparations activity. We need to try and get church and mosque ministers to let reparations speakers come to the church, particularly during Black History Month, as guest speakers. Again, this is about raising the public awareness of reparations and keeping it going on. During Sunday school, we need to use Bible verses and stories that promote reparations activities, promote an idea, a consciousness of reparations. There are a lot of them. For churches and community groups that have Kwanzaa celebrations in your region, you need to get reparations issues involved in the conversations, in the Kwanzaa conversations in December, January. Get the adult choirs, maybe on Men's Day, Women's Day, or other special activities to do something about reparations. There are reparations songs that can be sang in church that will not insult the congregation. We need to work with any and all Nation of Islam mosques in the area to push the issue of reparations. Have panel discussions at the mosque when allowed, and find other ways of helping mosque members to become highly knowledgeable about the reparations issue. For Black fraternal organizations and related activities, if you know a member of the Masons, either the 3-letter Masons or the 4-letter Masons, if you know the Shriners, the Eastern Stars, the Elks, the Moose Lodge, or any other similar organizations, find a way of getting the reparations issue put into the organization's newsletter, get it on the agenda of lodge or temple meetings, annual conferences, etc. Get the Masons and other similar groups to endorse the reparations movement. If you are or you know a member of a Black Greek organization, get the issue of reparations on the group's agenda at any and all meetings that are available for public discussion. Get the organization to sponsor reparations projects. Discuss the issue in the organization's newsletter or bulletin. Since we love the alphas and omegas and the kappas and etc., let's get them to do something about the debt that is owed to all African Americans. Let's get them involved in this. For the public and charter schools, we need to engage the PTAs in discussions about reparations and how it can be incorporated into regional schoolwork. Get a small group of concerned citizens together and offer, say, $100 or $500 rewards for the best student essays on the reparations issue during Black History Month, during Martin Luther King festivities, and any other time that the issue can be pushed. We need to get reparations storytellers. We need to get dramatic skits, singing groups to bring the issue of reparations to as many schools as possible. Again, these are short-term activities that can be engaged in to move the reparations issue forward. In terms of long-term parts of the plan, we need to locate and support any conscious rappers, any hip-hop or R&B artists who are willing to make reparations-oriented records. That means we need to buy the CDs, the DVDs when they come out. We need to encourage or pressure our artists to actually represent us, as they used to do during the 1980s, when it was black music that reflected every positive step that African Americans made. Ain't No Stopping Us Now is one of the major records that came out of the 1980s that basically told black folk that we had everything to look forward to and nothing to be ashamed of when we look backwards. But we had to move forward. We would also encourage you to find the reparations records that have already been made. Prince remade a Staples Singers record called When Will We Be Paid? It was on the internet. I think they may have taken it off, but we should be able to Google it and find it. We need to play that. It's a very good reparations record. We are talking about finding any movies or TV shows that have spoken positively about reparations and get that disseminated publicly. We're talking about finding Hollywood celebrities who will support the reparations movement. Danny Glover is great, but there are more of them out there than just Danny Glover. But we need to negotiate with them on how they can best help move us forward. We need to produce and find ways to get onto the public service announcements on radio and TV and talk about reparations, talk about Pause for the Cause, talk about anything that moves us forward toward more respect. We need to find a way to produce and regularly broadcast a cable TV program on the reparations movement in your local area. We need to do as many TV, radio, cable interviews on the reparations movement as possible. Try to get on the Steve Harvey Morning Show, for example. We need to be proactive in keeping the idea of reparations in front of everybody. These are the kinds of plans that we are talking about. We also have to write more. There are blogs that are available. We need to have reparations blogs everywhere. People need to not be able to get away from the reparations issue. If we want to earn respect, we've got to be relentless. We need to have a national legal strategy for reparations. Since so far we have not won a legal case on reparations, that does not mean we will not win a legal case on reparations. We need to get together with the legal experts and come up with a comprehensive legal strategy for reparations in this country. We need to do more than just H.R. 40, do more than just hope that the Judiciary Committee will finally have a vote on it and get it to the full House. We need to, in our local areas, try to get our city council members, in our state areas, try to get our state assembly people to pass legislation that has some reparations positive information in it. These are what we are talking about in terms of the long and short-term plans, long and short-term tactics that's part of a strategic reparations plan. We will win reparations. We will win reparations. Let me say it again. We will win reparations. We will win it because we will outplan, we will outthink, and we will out-implement anybody in the opposition. Thank you.
How will a race-based approach and plan solve the problems when 1, there is only one race and that's the human race, and 2, race is a social construct?
The legally And scientifically, you're absolutely correct that race is only a convenient political social construct that we use. And within that domain, the de facto social political construct, race is alive and way too influential in almost everything we still do in this country. Within that domain, we have to work toward accomplishing African American reparations. We have to recognize that, yes, we all one race, everybody's African, but in this country, African Americans are seen as being a different ethnic group and a different race, and we have to acknowledge that for right now in terms of moving forward. In order to get to what we call a diverse representation in this country, for everybody here to have the kind of respect that they deserve, then first of all, we need to end this separation. Here's one group, here's another group, here's another group. So scientifically, you're right that race is not a legally or logically supportable concept, but politically and socially, because it's convenient and we're used to it in the history of this country, it is still a fact. So we have to take that fact, aim for something that will hit that fact square in the gut. That is, black people are not going to accept any more backseat, any more living in the shadows, any more disrespect. We are going to demand, command, and achieve our respect. That then will force people who are not used to looking at everybody and giving them their due. We are taking the group that they are most used to treating at the bottom. We are forcing a change in the way they deal with them. That means they have to change in the way they deal with everybody. So we're taking the worst problem and trying to solve that to change the entire paradigm. And it has to be focused. We have to focus on ourselves. We cannot simply allow a number of other non-black allies to come and join the activity. Whites need to go and talk to other whites about reparations and not come and try to necessarily join the African American effort toward reparations. Why? Because allies tend not to come when you ask them. They tend to come when they want to. And when they come when they want to, they generally come before they're needed. And when they come before they're needed, they get frustrated at our own timing and they end up taking over. And it becomes their movement and not ours. Or they'll come too late, in which case we don't need you anyway. So allies have to come when you ask them to come and participate in how you need them to participate or not come at all. So we are asking whites who care about reparations, work on your own communities. African Americans need to deal with their own reparations activities and their own internal reparations activities. Whites cannot get us to stop addressing ourselves with the N word and the B word. We have to do that. They can't do that. Even if they told us to stop doing it, we're going to keep doing it anyway.
Are there any white specifically and non-black specifically groups that support the African American reparations movement? How would winning reparations impact race relations?
There are white groups, both locally and nationally. I cannot remember the name of the national white group that is in support of Incorporate's efforts toward reparations. In fact, they are members of Incorporate. Since Incorporate is a coalition, Incorporate has white, Latino, and other groups, except for African Americans, who are all part of the same effort. Unfortunately, cannot remember the name of the white group. They had a representative to come to Dominguez a few years ago, but I guess the name slipped my mind. The accomplishment of reparations, winning reparations for African Americans, because it would change the paradigm about our respect and credibility within the United States society and other parts of the world, would change the paradigm in terms of how Asian Americans deal with us and how the Hispanic population deals with us. They don't respect us either. Disrespect is prevalent, and disrespect is something that basically gets out of hand, expands out of hand in a heartbeat. Our getting the respect that we deserve, the debt being paid, will help our relations with everybody else. And in fact, we can learn a lot from the Japanese Americans and their accomplishment of reparations. We can learn a lot in terms of the tactics they use and how they were able to overcome tremendous legislative odds to get the Civil Liberties Act passed. And we're trying to set up dialogue with them now. The Latino population in California is a lot closer to getting reparations in California than we are. They actually have a very good argument. And that argument has been pushed in the state legislature, and two bills got passed, or the same bill got passed twice. Arnold just wouldn't sign it. The governor wouldn't sign it. The governor vetoed the act to pay the Hispanic population reparations in California. So there are relations of commonality that we can have with other communities, either based on the experience that they've already had or experiences that they're going through now. For the Latino population and the African American population to work together on common reparations issues, I think would be a very good idea, particularly in certain states like in California. But essentially, the achievement of African American reparations by and for African Americans will change our reputation and our credibility with everybody else.
The government is already broke. If they pay reparations, won't that destroy the country?
Don't believe the hype. Let me tell you what the former chairperson of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, said when the Tea Party Republicans kept saying, we owe too much, we owe too much. We got too much money going out and not enough coming in. He said, as long as we control the printer, then we cool. That means as long as we print our own money. So whatever debt we owe, we can print the money to pay it. Now we might have to fight inflation after that, but whatever we owe the Chinese, if they get crazy about we want the money now, fine, we print the money and send it to them. Part of the problem with people being underwater, being overly indebted, like some of the African countries, they can't print the money that will satisfy the debt. America can print the money that will satisfy the debt because the dollar is a sovereign currency worldwide. Every country has to have dollar bills in their national bank. We can print the money to pay off the debt. So we are not out of money. This country is not even close to being out of money. But reparations is not just about money anyway. There have been suggestions made by some of those who have filled out the survey form on what reparations should look like to the African American community. There have been suggestions made that don't have anything to do with here's the money. The best suggestion that I have so far seen is on a given day, say July 4th, 2018, if we think we'll have it done by then. And July 4th is a decent day, but on July 4th of that year, all debt owed by all African Americans is gone. It's wiped out. There's no debt that you owe. You don't owe a penny for anybody, to anybody, or for anything. There's no transfer of funds. You just are debt-free. That would resolve the debt. Now, we know there'll be some consequences. We know that after the celebration, that a number of us would immediately go right back into debt, but for that brief time period in which we were debt-free, that we may really know what freedom feels like. We are not obligated, we are not tied down, we are not chained to some debt that we should have paid for long ago. African Americans worked enough not to owe a penny to anybody in this country anyway. That may be a way of getting that done. But again, that does not involve any transfer of money from the Congress or from the Federal Reserve to the population. The reparations strategic plan that we have does not call for that kind of compensation in the first place. If and when the United States government takes us seriously, takes this whole movement seriously, that we have become relentless and consistent enough to be there, to have it in entertainment, to have it in the news programs, to have it in the universities, when they see that issue is not going away and that there is some positive movement toward getting it resolved. Once the government sees that this is serious, they will, as a tactic, say, fine, we will pay you off. That's a very normal response. We will pay you off. Here's $150 million. We're giving it to the NAACP. Now, all y'all black people not go and get your money. But understand, it's over. Don't come back. This ends it. Here's the money. Now y'all go and figure out what your portion is from the NAACP. Now you know that's nothing but chaos and confusion. You know there'll be nothing but black folk fighting over crumbs. We know how to do that. And what will be almost a necessary consequence of that is what the Native Americans had to do when they got their settlements from the United States government. When people started showing up looking white, blonde, blue-eyed, saying that they were Indian and that they wanted to be part of the settlement. Native Americans had to come up with a registry of who was and was not Native American. You got to prove to us that you are Native American, otherwise you cannot be part of the settlement. We would have to come up with a registry of blackness. Who is and is not black? Now, can you imagine that? That's what would happen if the federal government decides we're serious, or when they decide we're serious, and here's the money, we give it to one of your black organizations, now y'all go and get it. We'd have to fight with each other over who is black and who ain't black. So, you black, but you the wrong kind of black. You're not getting a penny. You're from the Caribbean, you can't get any money. Go back to Jamaica, you can't be part of this. You from Massachusetts, they having slaves in Massachusetts. No, we're not going for that. We're only talking about black people who came from the South. Just imagine the chaos. It cannot be just about money. If it's about money, I don't think the reparations issue will ever be resolved if it's only about money. There's too many ways to scuttle the whole project.
What role does culture play in the reparations plan?
Because culture, or because a viable culture, always provides a sense of belongingness, a sense of acceptability, a sense of confidence. Having a viable African American culture helps us move forward in terms of achieving reparations and even wanting to achieve reparations, seeing reparations as an issue that the African American population should be fighting about. As long as we allow African American culture to be brutalized, to be diluted, as long as we spend all this time downgrading African American women, that harms the reparations movement. Reparations movement needs folk confident about who they are. So African American culture has to be promoted and advocated among our population to make sure that we feel good about being black. We cannot be ashamed of being black. Black people who feel ashamed of who they are not going to push this, not going to advocate this. In fact, they're going to end up being some of those who try to undermine it. Culture is crucial in everything that African Americans do. They have to see the world through the eyes of being black and being great at being black. A number of them now see the world through the eyes of being black, and they don't want to be black. They want to be anything other than that. The famous quote that Callie House made, my face is black, true, but that's not my fault. I want to be remembered as someone who deals honestly with her fellow man. I want to be remembered as somebody with character. Culture is about character building. In African American culture, when it is positive and when it is smoking, helps us build more character within ourselves and not to produce more characters who, zip around like crazy. Culture cannot be, a positive, viable culture cannot be separated from the reparations movement. It is just an integral part. That's why the movement that students are coming up with in terms of let's take a pause on the N word and the B word is exceedingly valuable in pushing the entire reparations project forward. We have to break the addiction. We have to get away from that. You can't keep disrespecting yourself and then expect other people to respect you. It doesn't work that way. And using those words on a frequent basis demonstrates, no matter what we intend, using those words demonstrate a disrespect for ourselves. You don't earn respect from disrespect. You can't, it doesn't work. Never has. So, yes, culture, because it is so important in creating the climate for respect for yourselves, is integral to the reparations movement.
Didn't the black farmers' settlement resolve the reparations issue?
It's a good question. The black farmer settlement, the $1.25 billion, is a reparations victory. It absolutely is. It's a United States reparations victory. Black farmers were being compensated at $50,000 a pop for the U.S. Agricultural Department having relentlessly discriminated against them. They didn't offer them any kind of support. They didn't offer them any kind of loans. Basically, we're going to help you fail, because there's been this attitude in American society that black people don't need land anyway. You need to keep y'all off land, because on land you may become economically self-sufficient, self-reliant. We're not interested in that. The agreement to pay the farmers that money is still being worked out, still being implemented. The authorization to pay them, definitely that's been done. Congress passed it, the president signed it, advocated it, pushed it, and the courts justified it. The courts affirmed that it was okay to do that. However, they are still, some farmers still have not been paid, and a lot of them have not been paid. The agricultural department is just slow. They've just been delaying it. They get people frustrated, so they'll die, or they'll walk away from it. You know how that goes. This is more bureaucracy. But since you raised that issue, President Obama was very instrumental in getting that settlement done. He was very instrumental in getting that authorization accomplished. So even though he may have said, he did say he was against reparations, he actually worked hard to get that done. And that was reparations. That was a reparations victory in this country.
So that settles all this?
No, it does not settle it. Number one, we don't own that much land anyway. We don't have that many black farmers left. There has been a systematic decrease in the amount of land that black people own. We've gone from 5.5 million square acres to less than 1.5 million square acres in this country. And in California, black people owning land is just not happening much. In fact, most black people live in apartments in California. We don't live in houses. We live in apartments. That's the majority. The farmer settlement, once they do get paid, just means that they finally will get treated, at least in that one case, equally to the white farmers. And while it is a victory that we can use to build on, it does not solve everything. It simply shows that we can win if we keep at it, keep at it, keep at it. Because agriculture department has been fighting that suit for the last 25 years. They just finally lost it, but they finally lost it by a combination of forces. Our president, who actually advocated, Bush didn't advocate that, President Obama did.
The African American Educational Initiative signed by President Barack Obama, combined with the Black Farmers Settlement, resolves the reparations issue, right?
The executive order that he signed to create this African American Educational Achievement Initiative just means that the federal government will spend some more money to identify and to promote, to educate a few more African American students. Not enough. We're not talking about even the thousands who are in Chicago. That's not even going to help most of them. They're still going to get poor educations and still graduate or go to jail out of Chicago, as they are in most other urban centers that we are in. Those are all small steps toward the eventual large victory. They are all important. They cannot be ignored, but no, they are not. They don't solve everything, and they have not even gotten to be a gigantic step yet. Even go back to the farmer stuff, getting the $50,000 is not going to save the land of a whole lot of farmers. $50,000 by the time they finally get it will end up being money that they can use to buy seeds, to maybe buy some equipment. But $50,000 does not go for a farm. It just means this is symbolic compensation for all that we put you through. This is not actual compensation. $500,000 wouldn't even begin to account for the bad stuff on that ledger. But symbolically, it's great. In actual fact, no. And most of them still haven't even gotten the $50,000. And you got to hire legal counsel to get that. Spend more money to be able to get the money that they say they're going to give you. Without counsel, you will not even be able to get through the paperwork. No, that's a hassle. And that, again, that's partially what I'm saying. Once they take us seriously and throw that money down, I just want y'all to imagine how crazy this is going to become.